It will be sad imagining a world where I can no longer imagine anything. These are the final words of Gremmy Thoumeaux, and he just so happens to be the character that I'm going to be analysing in today's video. Gremmy has a fascinating ability to transform whatever he imagines into reality via his fascinating power, the Visionary. In this video, I will be breaking down everything that there is to know about Sternritter v the Visionary Gremmy. I'm going to be talking about everything from his powers to his unique relationship with the other Sternritter, along with his incredible battle against Kenpachi. So be sure to stick around until the end of this video, because I'm going to be revealing what had happened to Gremmy after the 1000-year Blood War arc, via some exclusive details that are revealed about him in 2 Bleach light novels. So without further delay, this is my comprehensive deep dive into the Sternritter Gremmy Thoumeaux. Gremmy makes his debut appearance within chapter 572 of the manga. He has a youthful character design with his messy short blonde hair along with his expressive wide eyes, which perfectly convey his emotional state. He wears a variation of the Sternritter uniform consisting of a long trench coat which is buttoned up in the middle all the way up to a high collar which covers his chin. Gremmy has quite a distinctive smile which exudes an aura of creepiness, and I'm certain that he would have unnerved most opponents, but the likes of Kenpachi wasn't too fazed by his mannerisms. Gremmy is seen to be smiling when he engages in battle, and while he is using his ability called the Visionary, Kenpachi even notices that the Quincy has a certain look to him when he becomes determined to defeat an opponent by succumbing to his lust for battle, something which complements Kenpachi's characteristic desire for battle. In chapter 579, Gremmy's true form is revealed to be nothing more than a brain which is sealed within a glass casing. As with most of the Sternritter, Gremmy is a complicated character despite the brief role that he has within the 1000-year Blood War arc, and it's for good reason that he is remembered by fans of the manga. In terms of personality, he is a very confident individual who is sure of himself as well as his abilities, to the extent that he refers to himself as the strongest amongst all of the Sternritter. Gremmy falls for the allure of pride and arrogance when he declares that Kenpachi is unable to understand the powers of the Visionary, even going as far as to declare that he will defeat him by not even raising a single finger against him. This is what had ultimately resulted in his downfall, which was his over-reliance on his Shrift ability, because he had failed to factor in the limitations of his own body, which could not withstand the power of his imagination. The Visionary is an overpowered, broken ability which allows him to manifest into reality absolutely anything that he imagines, essentially granting him the power to create something out of nothing. This power is very formidable, and if left unchecked, it can even work against Gremmy, like we see in chapter 576 when he had become so engrossed into his battle against Kenpachi that he had started to imagine his own death. Similarly, if Gremmy forgets to harden his body, then he will also be vulnerable to attack. So when he is fighting with the Visionary, he needs to be really focused so as to not have the power turn against him. Gremmy is an intelligent character with a tendency towards unhinged antics that motivate his character to lose himself in what he is doing. His cunning nature leads to him using his powers in very unconventional and creative ways, which is a joy to behold as a reader. It adds layers of depth to his powers, whilst also making the battles that he is involved in very unpredictable. Gremmy demonstrated his lack of emotional maturity with his refusal to accept defeat. His death is both quite ironic as well as being very poetic. He literally ends up being defeated by the very power that had given him such confidence. In a way, he was right that his power was unbeatable, and it had the potential to make him the strongest. Sadly, Gremmy's body couldn't stand a chance against the limitless nature of the Visionary, which granted him exactly what he had wanted, but at the cost of his own life. Interestingly, Gremmy's backstory isn't revealed within the manga, but we do learn details about his past within the short story Beginning of the Revive of Tomorrow and during the Can't For Your Own World light novels. Beginning of the Revive of Tomorrow reveals that before the first Quincy invasion, Gremmy had used his powers in order to create the Sternritter Shaz Domino. Despite being just an imaginary being like Guanal Li, Shaz had eventually gained his own Shrift ability called the Viability, which had enabled him to replace every imaginary part of his body with real parts made up of reishi. This is how Shaz Domino had escaped the control of Gremmy by becoming a free sentient being. Gremmy eventually had lost interest in him and let Shaz do as he pleases, and eventually Yuobak had even engraved the letter Sigma onto his soul and had accepted him into into the sternritter. In chapter 15 of Can't For Your Own World, we learn that Gremmy was imprisoned by Yhwach and he was sealed within a cage hidden deep within Sealburn. He was released by Yhwach during the Second Quincy invasion in order to fight the Shinigami. Nearly all of the sternritter were afraid or apprehensive to approach Gremmy aside from Lil Toto, who is revealed to have a playful banter with him, demonstrating that they have some sort of familiarity and even friendship with each other. She tells him that she is hungry and he responds by using the powers of the visionary in order to manifest a selection of sweets and pastries for her. Gremmy takes out several Shinigami on the battlefield as Lil Toto thanks him for saving her life and tells him to try some of the food too. However, Gremmy tells her to leave because he believes that all of the sternritter, including Yhwach, are selfish. Lil Toto agrees and comments on how she thinks that it's cruel that Yhwach had locked him up in a cage until now. She hopes that he will be permanently set free after the war with the Shinigami is over. Gremmy tells her that he wouldn't know what to do with his freedom if he were to ever attain it. Lil Toto recommends that he takes up cooking as a hobby so that he can taste a wider variety of foods, and so that he can presumably expand upon the selection of foods that he can imagine into reality. The two sternritter end up going their separate ways as Lil Toto leaves with Bambietta and Gremmy departs with his creation Guanal Lee. Gremmy is first introduced into the manga during chapter 572 when he attacks his own creation Guanal Lee. Gremmy is seen sitting within the barrier that is currently healing the captains Kensei and Rose. He tells Guanal that he has done really well for a product of his imagination, but he tells Gremmy that he can still fight with his ability. But Gremmy explains that his ability to erase his existence from sight, mind and memory is amazing, which explains why he had disappeared from Gremmy's memory just until now. This was in anticipation of saving himself, because he had known that Gremmy was going to end his life. Angered that his plan has been foiled, Guanal charges towards his creator, but Gremmy reminds him that he doesn't know who he is and that he can't imagine his future anymore. Guanal immediately ceases to exist as his body disintegrates into nothing. Gremmy then tells Isane not to worry about the captains who are being healed by her because he has already killed them. He then evades an attack from Yachiru, who reveals to her that he had seen her coming from a mile away, so it was pretty easy for him to dodge her attack. He then stops her by imagining and manifesting the bones in her body to be made up of cookies as she collapses to the floor as her bones easily begin to break. He tells her that the power of the imagination is the most powerful thing in the world, revealing that he has the power to imagine anything into existence. Suddenly, they are interrupted by the arrival of Kenpachi, who turns up after sensing a drop in Yachiru's spiritual pressure. He is disappointed to find that she was being troubled by some little kid who is just making a racket. Gremmy recognizes him, stating that he seems to be as strong as he had imagined, which is quite a foreshadowing for how his battle against Kenpachi ends, but I'll talk more about that later on. Gremmy ends up raising the ground that they are stood on in order to create a grand stage in order to properly welcome Kenpachi. He explains to him that he has an ability called the Visionary, which allows him to turn fantasy into reality. He tells him that he is lucky to be fighting him, revealing that he thinks that he is the strongest sternritter, something that he knows Kenpachi would love to put to the test. He tries to attack Gremmy, but he is unable to cut him. The sternritter reminds him that he can imagine things into existence, so he has simply imagined his body to be harder than steel in order to defend against Kenpachi's attack. Despite this, the monstrous Kenpachi forces his sword down Gremmy's shoulder, saying that he is disappointed in him, suggesting that he should have told him that his body was reinforced, because he would have attacked him with enough force to cut through steel if that was the case. Gremmy remains silent as Kenpachi tells him that there is nothing that he cannot cut. The sternritter stands back up, revealing that he is able to imagine his wounds to be healed as the cut on his shoulder is no longer there. Gremmy explains how Kenpachi is the type of person who's going to be unable to understand his ability until he is defeated by it, demonstrating his arrogance as he taunts Kenpachi by saying that he will kill him by using his imagination alone, and he's not even going to lift a single finger against him. Gremmy manifests lava and fires it towards Kenpachi, telling him that it has been generated from his head, as Kenpachi states that he doesn't mind illogical powers like this as he cuts the lava away from him. When he notices that Yachiru is nearby, he yells at her to get out of here, but Gremmy tells him that her bones have been turned into cookies with his ability. If she even tries to move, her bones will shatter and she will die. Kenpachi charges towards him, but he is suspended in a cube of water. Gremmy then creates a crack in the ground and drops the water that Kenpachi is suspended within into the crack and closes it up. He explains that he was aware that Kenpachi wouldn't die from being simply crushed, so this is why he had trapped him underwater. So in this condition, even if he survives being crushed to death, it won't change the fact that he is unable to breathe while enclosed in water, so he will die slowly. Gremmy says realizes that he may be a monster, but suffocating him for an hour should be enough to defeat him. But suddenly, Kenpachi breaks free as a huge rock is about to hit Gremmy, but he makes it disappear. Kenpachi then suddenly emerges from the smoke, lunging in to attack, but Gremmy is able to defend against him. Kenpachi tells him that if Yachiro is okay being held by him, then it must mean that her bones have returned to normal. He tells him that he must have been so caught up in their fight that he was unable to continue using his brain to maintain the state of Yachiro's bones. Askin and Pepe are seen nearby observing the battle. Askin wonders why did Yhwach let Gremmy out, as Pepe says that he agrees with him and that he should have been locked up for the rest of his life. Askin says that he is going to get away from here, saying that he doesn't want to get caught up in the catastrophe that Gremmy is about to cause. After Yachiro leaves to get her arm healed, Gremmy tells him that he is surprised that Kenpachi had figured out that his imagination for her was interrupted. He tells him that there was no way that he could have kept it going. Kenpachi asks him if he wants to fight because he did after all refer to himself as the strongest Quincy, so wouldn't the strongest Quincy want to crush the strongest Shinigami? Kenpachi yells at him to start their fight now that there aren't any more distractions for either of them on the battlefield. Kenpachi charges towards him but is surrounded by several blocks that shoot up from the ground towards him, intending to crush him. Gremmy thinks to himself that he has never thought of wanting to crush anyone because up until now nobody had even tried to lay a finger on him. He assumes that this is obviously because he is the strongest. Kenpachi survives his attack as Gremmy continues to think that up until now he hasn't found the need to prove himself by killing an opponent. So why is it that he is now suddenly overcome with the desire to crush Kenpachi? He creates multiple guns which appear around him and fire simultaneously towards Kenpachi, along with several missiles which are also fired at him. One of the missiles is seen to be cut in two as an explosion erupts, causing Gremmy to raise his arm in order to protect his face from the blast. Kenpachi then appears from the smoke, telling him that he has just used his hands, as Gremmy begins to smile intensely, with Kenpachi saying that his sword is finally starting to enjoy itself. At the start of chapter 576, Gremmy thinks about the look that he has on his face right now, stating that he doesn't even know if the look that he is making is good or not, as he asks why is it that he feels so good right now. We can see Gremmy smiling with his battle against Kenpachi about to get serious. We can understand that Gremmy's isolation and fearsome power had turned him into an outcast. He believes that he was shunned by the Quincy because of his incredible strength, which is why nobody had challenged him before. But nobody wanted to associate themselves with him because he is totally unhinged and nobody could really be bothered getting in his way, as Pepe and Askin had highlighted earlier. This is why Gremmy is thoroughly enjoying his fight against Kenpachi. For the first time he has a purpose to fight, and he is trying to prove that he is the strongest while fighting against another self-proclaimed strongest. Kenpachi tries to attack him, but Gremmy creates a barrier in order to protect himself, but it is easily shattered by Kenpachi. He then cuts through the sternritter's shoulder once again, but Kenpachi is unable to pull his sword back as it's stuck inside Gremmy's body. The sternritter sadistically smiles as a giant hand appears in the air above Kenpachi and it crushes him. Kenpachi once again breaks free and rapidly cuts Gremmy across the body. Kenpachi tells him that he is too slow, with the sternritter thinking to himself that he was late in realizing that he has been cut, and if he is late to notice an injury then he will be late to heal himself, which will make him late to make his next move. In that moment of delay, Kenpachi will be able to successfully land his next attack as the Shinigami repeatedly cuts Gremmy's body. While being attacked, Gremmy wonders why is it that he cannot stop his sword. He wonders if Kenpachi really believes that he can beat him. Gremmy starts to then think about losing, as he repeatedly says to himself that this can't be right. After Kenpachi's brutal assault, he asks him what is going on. Why is it that he is not resisting against him? He even asks if he has started to imagine himself losing. This makes Gremmy snap back to reality as he realizes that he had almost imagined himself dying to Kenpachi. After restoring his wounds, he thanks Kenpachi, who had helped him to wipe away all of the thoughts about his own death thanks to his words just now, as he announces that he is never going to die now. Gremmy yells that he is going to regret this as he creates a clone of himself, telling the Shinigami that he is going to show him his best power. Gremmy reveals that he is able to create life with his imagination, so he has given birth to another version of himself. Both of them are unable to be cut and neither of them will die. Worst of all, the power of his imagination has now been doubled as he summons a meteor to fall down upon the Serite. Gremmy tells him to fade away along with the Serite because after the meteor makes impact with the ground, he will be the only one left standing. Kenpachi smiles, accepting the challenge, stating that he has never cut a meteor Meteor before, as he yells out the name of his Zanpakuto Nozarashi. In chapter 577, as the meteor is falling, Gremmy says that even if he is killed, the meteor will not go away, because it is already a reality. Nothing can stop it from falling and wiping everybody out. Gremmy doesn't seem to care if this results in his fellow sternritter being killed too. As long as he remains alive in the end, that is all that matters to him. He tells Kenpachi that this is what it means to be helpless, but Kenpachi smiles, telling the two Gremmys that they are the ones who are helpless. He heads for the meteor and successfully destroys it with a single swing from his true Shikai. Following the destruction of the meteor, Gremmy is left utterly shocked, wondering how on earth Kenpachi was able to destroy the meteor with just a single swing of his blade, yelling out that he is a monster. Kenpachi tells him to relax, because simply put, there is nothing that he cannot cut. Multiple clones of Gremmy then appear and surround Kenpachi as they summon a void of outer space to trap Kenpachi within. The sternritter says that his bodily fluids in outer space will evaporate out of his eyes and oral cavity. The blood that is exposed to outer space will begin to boil from his wounds, and if he tries to breathe, his lungs will collapse and his biotissue will disintegrate, giving him a slow and painful death. Gremmy says that he will be able to experience all of this as long as he can maintain his consciousness. Incredibly, Kenpachi cuts through one of the Gremmy clones while in space and tells him that he has forgotten to harden his body. The remaining clones gather around Kenpachi and detonate near him, leaving behind a single, out-of-breath version of Gremmy who looks up at Kenpachi's beaten body emerging from the smoke. He once again calls him a monster, but he yells out that he has figured out how to beat him. He is just going to become stronger than him. Gremmy keeps saying to himself that he wants to win, and for the first time in his life, he has found someone that he wants to beat. Gremmy's inability to accept someone stronger than him pushes him to become as strong as Kenpachi, as he declares that he is going to crush him. However, his body is unable to contain the limitless power of Kenpachi's strength, which causes it to tear apart. Kenpachi reveals to Gremmy that he himself had turned the idea of Kenpachi into a monster in his own mind, and it is that very monster which had ended up killing him. He was defeated by his own power. In chapter 579, Gremmy thinks about his defeat, asking if he was killed by his own imagination, but he deduces that he was definitely able to envision Kenpachi's power. He tells Kenpachi that his imagination was correct. He imagined Kenpachi's power entirely, but the only flaw to his plan was his inability to understand that the only body that can maintain such a large amount of power is Kenpachi's, thus explaining why Gremmy's body was torn apart so easily. The limitations of his physical form were the reason that Gremmy had lost, not his imagination. During his dying moments, Gremmy says that he had wanted to win so badly, as his body begins to disintegrate, leaving behind a brain that is encased in glass and suspended in some form of liquid. Gremmy tells him that even the body that he is looking at now was a product of his imagination. He says that he didn't lay a single finger on him, just as he had said during their battle. Gremmy accepts that his imagination is at its limit, as he then reveals his final words, which are that it'll be sad imagining a world where he can no longer imagine anything, as his body completely disappears, leaving behind his brain. Gremmy lives on in some form during the events of Can't Be Your Own World, when it is revealed that his brain was taken by Tokinada Tsuneyashiro, who had used it in order to create the artificial hybrid being Hikone. In chapter 24 of the light novel, during Kenpachi's battle against Hikone, the sternritter Candice notes that Hikone's personality was gradually resembling Gremmy's as their fight had progressed. Now, looking at Gremmy's journey through the manga, it's obvious that his power the visionary was the origin of his downfall. He was imprisoned by Yuhobak and feared by his peers because of this incredible power, but despite this, he was still able to share a friendship with his fellow sternritter Lil Toto. Despite his demise, Gremmy left behind a significant impact upon the plot, stirring questions about the extent of his powers and their origins. During Can't Be Your Own World, it is implied that Gremmy may also have been a host to one of the Soul King's body parts, presumably his brain. This would explain the incredible powers that he possesses, but as of making this video, this point of speculation hasn't been confirmed to be true by either Kubo or Narita, but it does make for a very plausible explanation to his powers. So with all of this said, what do you think about the character of Gremmy? I thoroughly enjoyed diving into his character and revealing everything that there is to know about him, including his obscure mentions within the different Bleach spin-offs. Did you learn something new about Gremmy's character? Definitely be sure to let me know in the comments. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach character analysis video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.